This is the Egyptian wing here.
Yeah, it goes. No, it goes. Nice section. A couple more sections still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's already inside there, brother. We always say nobody don't come here for no British history.
No, my goodness.
So they want history. People come here to check out.
And you have to come so many times. Hotel. You know, we start with the Rosetta Stone. Chances are the way in which we'll do this, I plan to come back many more times. So we can only touch on certain things to really impact. But the Rosetta Stone is important because it is said that that was the stone that opened up the understanding of the Western world to Kemet. That was really, they give credit to Champollion and all the rest of them. But what's interesting, which is a story I'd like to tell you before we talk about the Rosetta Stone. 1798, Napoleon goes into Kemet, and he has with him just about every facet of French or European intelligentsia with him. They're called the savants. But what the story isn't told is that there was a man that was born in Haiti, and he was born to a woman by the name of Marie Dumas, and his father was a count, a very important person, European man, in France. This European man fell in love with this African woman. Marie Dumas had a child, and the child's name was Thomas Alexandre Dumas. Marie Dumas dies, and the father takes his son, Thomas Dumas, to France. And he is taught in the entire higher intelligentsia. He comes from a family of wealth. The father marries again, and Thomas Dumas is insulted that his father married somebody, and he felt it was disrespecting his mother. So he left his father and had nothing else to do with him and joined the French army. And he rose in the ranks to high general. He was at the same time beloved by the French people. They loved Thomas Dumas, Thomas Alexander Dumas. And he, in the army, he joins, he fights, he becomes recognized as the finest fencer and warrior in France. He is part of the army that goes into Egypt. He is the one that was sent first to open up Kemet for France. So we don't even understand as a people that it was a black man from the Haiti that opened up French. And then Napoleon came with the troops into Kemet. Thomas Alexander Dumas was beloved by the people. He was just loved. He was a hero. He was a handsome, strong warrior, intelligent, admired by black and white in France. When Napoleon and Dumas were in France, Napoleon got message that he had to return to France because of internal things going on. There was a war going on. So what he does is that he brings Thomas Dumas, who is not a general as high as he is. He sends him back to France. He says, I want you to go back to France. He knows something in the back of his mind. He's already been told something, but he's not going to tell Dumas. What he does, he tells the enemy where Dumas is, and they capture him and hold him for 4 years in prison. Napoleon finishes what he was doing in Kemet and returns to France. He becomes emperor of France. What he was told was that if Dumas gets back to France first, he's going to become emperor. And what Napoleon did is that he purposely had Dumas arrested by the enemy. He told the enemy where Dumas was in order for him to be able to finish up his business. He was held for 4 years, Dumas in prison. It gave Napoleon time to finish what he was doing, return to France, and become emperor. If Thomas Dumas had got there first, he would have become emperor of France. And now Thomas Alexander Dumas gives birth to a son. The son he gives birth to, his name is Alexander Dumas, the man who wrote The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Man in the Iron Mask. But he also wrote another book that nobody really focuses on. It's called Georges. And Georges is in honor of another great African from Martinique. His name was Chevalier Saint-Georges, who was older than his father, but he was also the finest fencer in France and the finest violinist in France. Chevalier Saint-Georges and Alexandre Dumas were sent to the French Caribbean to recruit African warriors. They came and they got a black brigade and returned back to fight in the French Revolution. When these warriors were not fighting, they were a musical band. I want you, when you get a chance, I want you to go on the internet and Google a poem that's entitled Black Brigade. It's written by George Edward Tate, T-A-I-T, The Black Brigade. I want you to read that poem, and I want you to get a sense of what's being said. Alexandre Dumas writes all these books. Alexandre Dumas, the second, gives birth to Alexandre Dumas III, the third. Alexandre Dumas, the grandson of Thomas Dumas, the son of Alexandre Dumas, is a dramatist. He rewrites the way in which French plays are written, and he becomes one of the greatest writers of plays, playwriter in France. These are the three Alexandre Dumas. I tell you that because that Rosetta Stone and everything that France ever found out about Kemet was made possible by a black man from Haiti. And yet we don't know this. And that's something very important. Now, the Rosetta Stone was found in a place they call Rosetta, and it is a document written in stone, as you can see, and it has 3 languages on it. What's important about that stone is that they will tell you something, but I'm just going to straight out tell you what it is. We're going to leave that other story for some other time. That top writing is called hieroglyphs, or medunete, according to the Arabic, sacred script. The top is hieroglyphs, which is pictographic. The middle one is called demotic. And demotic is the language that is a script derived out of hieroglyphs. All the letters, the script of that comes down and becomes demotic. It's the same thing they're saying on top in hieroglyphs, but they're saying it in demotic. The third one is a further form of an African language. That third form was a further transcription of African writing, and it was the only way that the Greeks could be able to write. They adapted another African language. That African language that they adapted, that is at the bottom of that tablet, they say it's classical Greek. But classical Greek really is another form of African writing, and it's the only writing they could understand. Because even they couldn't understand hieroglyphs the way they should. They couldn't understand demotic. But that other writing is a language that they were able to adapt. They say classical, there is no Greek language. Greeks don't have a language. Because to have a language, you must have a script. That's the only way you can have a language. You cannot have a language because they say patois. They say the language spoken in Jamaica is not a language. They say it's a form of English. But so is Standard American English. Standard American English is a form of British English. So if the language spoken in Jamaica isn't a language, neither is Standard American English. But Napoleon said, history is written by the people who rule the world. If they say it's a language, they say it's a language, it's a language. But the way they define language contradicts what they actually say. And so the Rosetta Stone becomes important.